The sky is no longer the limit. Women are soaring to new heights. We're using our voices to prove the past can impact the future. As we celebrate new milestones and champion representation across the globe, because the next step to the moon and on to Mars is here. Join us as NASA honors past, present, and future of women in space. Welcome. I'm Dr. Crystal Johnson. I am honored to be a part of NASA's Women's Equality Day celebration. This year marks the 100-year anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote. We've come a long way over the past century, and NASA continues to work to elevate women and girls in the STEM fields. We need to not only equip women with the skills, but also encouragement, inspiration, and the chance to tell their stories. So before we get started, I just want to share with you who we're going to be talking to today. So first we have Clara Ma. Hi, Clara.
Hey.
So Clara was the winner of NASA's Curiosity Rover naming contest, and we're happy to have you with us here, Clara, today. Also, we have astronaut Stephanie Wilson. Hey there, Stephanie.
Hello.
Stephanie is a veteran of 3 space flights and has logged more than 42 days in space. I know that you have lots of questions for Stephanie, and I can't wait for us to get some insight from her and hear her thoughts about what the future looks like in terms of space. And also we have Charlie Blackwell Thompson. Hi, Charlie.
Hi.
So Charlie is the Artemis Launch Director in NASA's Exploration Ground System program, and that's based at Kennedy Space Flight Center in Florida. Hey there. All right, so now we're going to talk to everyone in just a moment, but before we do that, let's hear a word from our NASA Administrator, Jim Bridenstine.
I am happy to be part of NASA's Women's Equality Day celebration. Today marks the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment, guaranteeing and protecting women's constitutional right to vote. Our program today reflects upon the contributions of women pioneers by using the purple, white, and gold suffragette colors. We also celebrate the firsts of women in space, NASA Women Today, and the next generation of explorers. Etched in NASA's history are hardworking women whose contributions have helped advance every field of science and technology. The Artemis program's Woman on the Moon image seeks to honor these women, past and present, and inspire the women of the future to see themselves in her. I have a young daughter, and I want her to see herself as having the same opportunities I saw myself as having when I was her age. With footprints on the moon, I grew up knowing that the sky is not the limit. And in a few short years, when the first woman steps onto the moon, my hope is that my daughter will recognize that we need her contributions to exploring our solar system just as much. Recently, we added inclusion as one of our agency's core values. Inclusion of all is paramount to innovation. NASA's ability to produce next-generation science, technology, and land the first woman and the next man on the moon by 2024 depend on our success to empower all of America to come with us. The talented women and men of NASA today fill me with confidence and hope that we will not only accomplish our mission, but also enable individuals of all backgrounds to achieve their dreams. Today, let's celebrate the women of the past, recognize the talented, irreplaceable women working among us, and renew our commitment to help young women of the future reach for the stars.
So today's celebration not only commemorates the passage of the 19th Amendment, but also calls attention to women continuing the efforts towards full equality. It really warms my heart to hear the words that you just heard from our administrator, our leader of our agency. Our agency has done a great job in working towards diversity and inclusion for women and all. And that makes this place a wonderful place to be as we get excited about the future of our agency's mission. We have so many examples to celebrate in terms of firsts for women within our agency. And we'll talk about a few of those here today. Just so that you understand this dialogue and this panel discussion that we're going to have here, there have been so many of you out there that have been excited to give us questions. And so the dialogue that you're going to see, you will see people asking questions of our panel members here from the outside, and you'll see some of us being able to share as well. So I'm so excited to be here as a part of this to commemorate, to celebrate the past accomplishments of women that have helped us get here today, hear from our panelists their stories about who and what inspired them, and listen to their perspectives on what will get us to the future. And so, first, we're going to start by thinking about the past and reflecting on where we have been to get us to where we are today. A few of the first that we've celebrated: Mary W. Jackson was the first NASA Black female engineer. And for me, that's very, very exciting because as a Black female engineer, I would never have been able to achieve where I've gotten today had it not been for Mary Jackson taking that first step and getting our women to that place. Also, we had astronaut Peggy Whitson being the first female commander of the International Space Station and the first woman to command the International Space Station twice. She's the oldest woman to go to space at age 56. And Dr. Ellen Ochoa, who was the first Hispanic woman to go to space. We also had Shannon Walker, who was the first female astronaut to vote from the International Space Station. And astronaut Mae Jemison was the first Black woman to travel into space. And I would love to hear from you, Stephanie, what that means to you in terms of having something like that happen.
Well, thank you, Crystal. It's awesome that women are playing such a large role here at NASA. Certainly, I've had an opportunity to fly with Dr. Peggy Whitson on her as part of her command of the International Space Station. Both she and my shuttle commander, Pamela Melroy, were the first women to jointly command a space station and shuttle crew for STS over STS 120. We brought the Note 2 to the International Space Station, and it was wonderful to see their leadership, how they jointly brought the crews together, and how we were able to do a contingency spacewalk and work together with the mission control team to do the problem solving for that. And of course, Dr. Ellen Ochoa has a wonderful track record at NASA. When I came into the office, she was in the office as well, and I worked with her as she was the chief of the Capcom branch. So I had my training to work in mission control under her leadership. And then she went on to be both deputy and director of our Flight Crew Operations Directorate at that time, and then deputy and director of Johnson Space Center. So she was a wonderful mentor to me. She gave great advice, great opportunity also, and very excited to see her career through NASA. So it's a wonderful testament to the work that women are doing to contribute to the team here at NASA.
Very, very strong and dynamic women. So glad to be a part of this NASA team. And more recently, we experienced a significant milestone with Kathy Leaders, the first woman chosen to lead NASA's Human Exploration Program. Kathy wanted to share a few words of inspiration with us all.
So I'm struck here, first day in my new office, first day in the new office in the Mary W. Jackson building. And I'm struck by the shoulders of the people that I'm standing on that have brought me to this building. You know, obviously Mary W. Jackson is one of those. Obviously all the other folks that have served in this office are those too. And I'm struck at, as I sit here, looking back on my career and all the people out there that have let me stand on their shoulders, you know. There's been a lot of people that have reached down and pulled me up and are the reason that I'm here today. And why is this important? This is important because we have big problems. That's why we're here, to solve big problems. It's the coolest thing. I think it's the coolest thing about this agency is that we get to solve big problems. But to solve big problems, we need lots of big shoulders. So we're going to need every single one of you to reach out and look at pulling somebody up, somebody that may not look like you, somebody that may not think like you. Because through us building this human pyramid, we will reach the stars. And I look forward to providing some structure in that pyramid that gets us there. Thank you.
Wow, great words from Kathy. Speaking of people that she's standing on their shoulders, Charlie, you were the first female launch director. So, what does today mean to you in terms of Women's Equality Day? And how has your experience being the first female launch director shaped how you view the world?
Well, first, Crystal, just let me say, it's an incredible honor today to be here with you ladies, to be with such talented, impactful women. The passage of the 19th Amendment, you know, it not only gave women the right to vote, but it really enabled the path that eventually all of us were able to walk down. And so, I think about myself and I think about where would I be today if that hadn't happened 100 years ago? And I doubt very seriously that I would be in a position to be the launch director today. So today is a very special day. It's for so many reasons. Being the first woman launch director is an incredible honor. Sometimes it's hard for me to even really put into words. I grew up in rural South Carolina, and so if someone had told me growing up, Charlie, one day you're going to work on America's space program, and you're going to be a part of a launch team, and you're going to lead as we plan to put the first woman and the next man on the moon. That would be really hard for me to have wrapped my mind around as a youth growing up. And so having this role, what it has taught me and hopefully what it says to young people is don't limit your expectations, don't limit your goals, because anything is possible.
Thank you. And now I'd like to go to one of the online video questions. This first question is from a senator from the great state of West Virginia, Shelley Moore Capito.
Who or what inspired you to pursue a career in STEM?
So, Clara, could we get you to answer that first question?
Yes. So, first, can I just say also that it's such an honor to be invited to speak here alongside three really accomplished women that I really admire. So, thank you so much for having me here. But to answer the question, I think for me, it was about being lucky enough to find a problem that I really cared about solving from a really young age, and that was climate change and protecting the environment. I also had really supportive teachers in elementary school that pushed me to ask questions and to explore material beyond what would be on the test and to challenge myself. And those are my fifth and sixth grade teachers, especially. And I know all of that is more than 10 years ago now, but there are things that they taught me and inspired in me that I still carry with me today. And I'd also be remiss to not mention the incredible impact that my experience with NASA had on me as well. Like truly, I started out as this very shy, very antisocial, very awkward girl. And I didn't feel like I had a voice that was worth listening to. And NASA changed all of that. Getting to speak at events and do interviews and talk to students and teachers and reporters, I had to get over that shyness pretty quickly. And before visiting JPL, I'd never seen so many women scientists and engineers all in the same place and in positions of leadership too. And getting to be around them, having conversations with them, it made me see and really see that that was something I could be someday too. I think the most important thing that we need to do and that NASA needs to do is just to keep exploring and to do so in an inclusive way. The excitement that's generated by space exploration, I've seen firsthand how it attracts young people to careers in STEM.
Awesome. Thank you. So, Stephanie, what inspired you? Did you always want to be an astronaut?
Crystal, I did. I also was very fortunate to have very supportive parents to whom education was very important, and very supportive teachers, as Clara mentioned. in eighth grade. It was junior high school when I was in eighth grade. But I took a career awareness class, and the teacher there gave the class an assignment to interview someone who worked in an interesting career field. At the time, I was interested in astronomy. I grew up in a small town in Massachusetts, and since it was such a small town, there were not very many city lights, and so the night sky was very visible. And I interviewed an astronomy professor at a local area college and was fascinated by his work. He had an opportunity to travel across the world to observe different astronomical events. He was a teacher, a professor at a university, um, did research, worked with students, and I thought that was a wonderful way to participate in STEM and to become a scientist. I had a bit of a conflict with science and engineering. I love to understand how components and devices are put together, and I'm really interested in design. I eventually did decide to study engineering and thought that aerospace engineering would be a good combination of my interest in space and my interest in engineering. But and if I had an opportunity after working on a spacecraft to fly aboard a spacecraft into space, then that would just be icing on the cake. So becoming an astronaut was always an interest of mine.
That's exciting. And Charlie, what inspired you?
So my story is a little different than maybe our other two panelists. I actually didn't know what I wanted to do in high school. I had, had all kinds of interests, and for me, it was a teacher. And my physics teacher in high school asked me, hey, what are you going to study when you go off to school? And I was still making up my mind, and maybe I want to do this or that. And he said, have you ever thought about being or studying engineering? And and I thought, well, not really. I said to him, which I think how wise he was, but at the time the answer he gave me was sort of perplexing. I said, well, what would I do with an engineering degree? Like, what kinds of things could I do? And he looks at me and he says, Charlie, what kinds of things couldn't you do with an engineering degree? And at the time, I'm thinking, well, that's not all that helpful. But you know what? He was so wise because it has opened so many doors for me and allowed me to experience so many things. And so I have so much gratitude to him for kind of giving me that nudge, that one-on-one nudge to say, hey, why don't you think about studying engineering? And there's so many things you can do with that degree. And he was right.
Wow, that's awesome. There are so many women that are listening to this and so many people that are listening to this that have your same story, not really knowing what it is that they want to do. And it's not too late for us to encourage some of those young girls and young women to pursue STEM careers, even if they haven't been, good at math in the past. So thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. So let's take the next question. This next question, Emily Calandrelli.
What are some firsts by women at NASA that are the most personally meaningful to you?
All right, Clara, let's go back to you again.
So, Dr. Johnson, you mentioned that Shannon Walker was the first female astronaut to vote from the ISS, and I just think that's so amazing and a good example for young people today. Like, if Shannon Walker can do it from space, then we can do it here on Earth.
Thank you. And Charlie?
I would say a first for me is, and it's really hard to pick one because there are so many amazing women who have done so many things, and those first are important because they tell us that the way things have been is not the way that they're always going to be. But one that's very personal for me is, Joanne Morgan was the one woman that was in the firing room, one of 400 that were in the firing room when Apollo 11 launched. So when that historic mission lifted off, she was the only woman that was part of the launch team. And so I walk in firing room one all the time. That's where we're going to launch Artemis from, the very same firing room that we launched Apollo 11 from. And it is never lost on me when I walk in there, the women that have paved the way that that came before me and came before many of us, that really enabled the work that we do today.
Thank you. All right, this next question is from our Congresswoman from the great state of New York, Grace Ming.
What is a first for women in human spaceflight that inspires your work today?
Probably the one that's nearest and dearest to my heart is when the joint commanders between Dr. Peggy Whitson and Pamela Melroy were commanding the International Space Station and the Shuttle Discovery simultaneously. That was definitely a first that was near and dear to my heart, and I think was very inspirational to young girls.
What firsts in representation are you excited about seeing be achieved in NASA's space programs?
I think it would be really amazing to see the first woman walk on Mars someday. And I hope I'll be alive to see that. But I think, beyond first, it's important to make sure that there are people following those women who are the first to do something and who blaze that trail. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing women, in places of leadership at every NASA center, at headquarters, just across the agency. I think that's so important. And Charlie is such a great example of that, and I hope that she can inspire more people to follow that, and that the environment can be very inclusive and supportive.
So, ladies, let's now talk a little bit about where we are today. We have this whole new generation of female explorers and scientists, and we have NASA's Artemis program that we're looking to land the first woman and the next man on the surface of the moon by 2024. With this Artemis program, there's so much excitement around it and so much opportunity and possibility for all. We're actually looking at having a sustained presence on the moon. So going to the moon and testing out technologies and capabilities and getting us ready so that we can go even further, go beyond to Mars. Such an exciting time. And we just launched the Perseverance rovers to Mars. So now let's take another question by Senator Capito.
I'm so excited about the Artemis program that will send the first woman to the moon. What will that moment mean to you?
So I think getting to talk to NASA scientists and engineers, a lot of them are really inspired by when Neil Armstrong first landed on the moon in 1969. And I think to have a woman on there and to have a moment like that for women everywhere, that's going to be, that's going to inspire so many little kids to want to do the same thing.
How is NASA preparing the current generation of women astronauts for deep space flight?
We, of course, are supporting now the International Space Station. We had flights aboard the Soyuz vehicle, and now we're very excited that the Commercial Crew Program has brought to us the Crew Dragon via the SpaceX Space Exploration Company, and the Boeing company is also providing the Starliner vehicle to take us to the International Space Station, where we conduct the wonderful research aboard that international laboratory. We continue also developing the Artemis mission, where Lockheed Martin is developing the Orion vehicle on board the NASA provided and developed Space Launch System for the Artemis missions to the moon. And we are starting to work on those programs now, working on the lander program. And as we look across the Artemis missions, of course, our wonderful robotic missions, much as the Mars 2020 Perseverance with the Perseverance rover, gives us wonderful information and insight into the Martian environment, such that we can prepare for deep space missions onto Mars. And so those programs are ongoing, and those preparations and initial assessments are underway, and we're very excited about the future work in those programs.
Thank you, Stephanie. So this next question is a second question from Emily.
How does the workforce at NASA that's working on the Artemis program look a little different than the workforce that worked on the Apollo program, and why is that important?
Charlie, could you address that question?
I can. Last summer, actually, when we celebrated the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11, we actually invited the team to come back to Firing Room 1. And so when you looked at the team, when you look at old photos, there were 400 people, about 400 people in Fire Room 1. And there was, as I spoke before, there was one woman, very little diversity in the room at all. And so when you compare sort of where we were in Apollo, which was predominantly men, predominantly white men, to where we are with Artemis, when I look across our team that's about 100 big in Fire Room 1, it is much more diverse across the board. It's really a reflection of our society that we live in. And from a female participation or women in these technical roles in the control center, we've definitely seen a steady increase from Apollo, where we had one out of 400, so 0.25%, pretty low there. And so after we had the team out, I actually flipped through an old seating chart. So don't take this as scientific data. This is just notional, a quick skim. But when I went and flipped through our seating chart for the end of the shuttle program, and we had about 200 personnel in the prime or the launch firing room, and about 30 or so were women, give or take a little bit. So about 15%. So we went from a really small number to about 15% in shuttle. And when you look at our team today, we probably, out of the 100 engineers that will sit in the firing room on launch day, we have somewhere in the 30 to 40 range. So being a data person, I look at that and I say, there is still room for growth, right? So when we get ready for as we go forward in Artemis, there is absolutely room for growth there, but the slope of our curve is definitely in a good direction.
And as we think about the difference in diversity from the Apollo days to today, and the ratio of women to men, and the fact that we're going to be increasing more women, in the future, how have you been able to juggle priorities between work life and home life, and making sure that you're establishing that balance?
I would say that's probably for me probably one of the hardest challenges, because especially when my kids were younger, I have a family that I love. And you want to be involved in all the things that your kids are doing, and you want to be able to go watch when they're doing various activities, band, sports, school activities, and yet I have a job that I also love, and so learning to balance between them was really important for me. And it came down, for me, and this may not be an answer for anyone else, but for me, it came down to understanding what the must do's are, the must do's at home and the must do's at work. And when you understand your requirements and what you got to do, you take care of those things. And the things that maybe are nice to do but not gotta do's, those get a lot lower on the list. And that was part of the way that I learned to balance between the two.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So, this next question is from Katie Jevin, who's a social media intern at Johnson Space Center.
What advice do you have for women experiencing imposter syndrome, especially in male dominated fields?
I would say we probably all had a moment where we've had that imposter moment, right? Where you question, maybe, you question sort of how you got here, or maybe, the value, or, how good you are at something. I think the key is, in my mind, is recognizing that moment is probably normal, but you don't want to have that imposter career, right? Where you look over your career and you say, "Oh my goodness," uh, and question that. What I would say to someone is, don't forget the hard work that you've put in. Don't forget, that you have been trained for this, that you put the hard work in, that you're dedicated. Give yourself the advice that you would give to a friend. If someone that you were talking to, a mentor or a friend, and you were relaying the situation, what would you tell them? And give that same advice to yourself, because the reality is that you got this, right? You got it, and you've worked for it, and you deserve it, and you put the time in, and you're trained, or you wouldn't be here. And so I would say that. And then on top of it, I would say take those moments. We all have them, right? Take a moment where you knew that this is made for me, right? I am in my groove. I know it. And when you have that moment of doubt, reflect on that moment when you knew this job is mine, right? This job is for me. I love it. And then also think about, for me, this is important, is the, the example that you're setting and for the next generation to come. And that many of us have learned from the folks that came before us, men and women. We've learned from them. And there are people that are watching, all of us watching, many beyond this panel, right? Watching your parents and your teachers and people in your community. And, you're an example to them of all that can be accomplished. And so don't get in your own head, but remember, remember those moments that you knew, hey, I got this.
That's absolutely true. Thank you so much for that, Charlie. One thing that I will add to that is, sometimes when you are new in a position or when you get a position, you may not know all of the information that you need to know about it. You may not be the best, the smartest person in the room when it comes to your specific job, and that's okay. Most people, when they first start a job, don't know everything about it. And if you compare yourself to the other people in the room, like some of the men who, they sometimes will walk in and they have a saying, fake it until you make it. They will just charge on in and just, walk the talk and stand firm and strong in the fact that they are there and they know they have a right to be there. Many of our women end up finding themselves in that kind of situation, and they shy away from showing people that they don't necessarily know. So they may sit in the back of the room when they walk into a meeting or along the wall instead of at the table because they don't necessarily want to ask the questions or engage. But you will find that if you shy away from learning as much as you can and engaging as much as you can, it makes your learning curve so much longer. So I would say to you, understand that the skill set that you have and the expertise that you do have is of value, even if it's not, at the top level. And you have you're beautifully, uniquely qualified to be where you are. And there's that value that comes to the table. Just the fact that many times you are a woman, and she asked the question in a male dominated environment, just the fact that you are a woman brings some beautiful uniqueness to the table. You have different life experiences, different exposures. And so the way that you come at solutions for problems that you may face will be different from some of the ones that the men bring to the table. So it really starts with what Charlie said. It's right here. You have got to make sure that you've got this. You deserve to be here. So take advantage of every moment that you are there. Our next question comes from Sophia Martinez from UCLA.
What current action plan and major milestone goals are in place to try and eliminate the gender gap at NASA?
Well, let's see. I'm going to take the question from maybe a little different perspective, maybe not from the big NASA perspective, so maybe someone else on the panel can speak to that. But I'm going to speak to it as a technical leader. So to me, when we start to think about addressing the gender gap at NASA or the gender gap in technical fields, it really starts with that study in STEM and encouraging. And just like I had that teacher that encouraged me, it is incumbent upon all of us to encourage the youth around us. I love nothing better than engaging with the local schools and my hometown schools and encouraging students to study in the STEM field. And I also think another thing, and you, Crystal, you mentioned this in the prior question about an element of this, but it's in that mentoring. So when young women come into the workforce, you're right, they don't always have maybe all of the confidence or maybe all of the answers. And so getting a mentor, being a mentor is extremely important.
This next question comes from Senator Capito.
What do you tell young girls who are interested in space-related fields?
And Clara, this question is for you. And also, what would your call to action be for the younger generation as you answer that question?
To the younger generation, I would say be inspired by the past and pay attention to the present in order to build your future. You know, the world is yours to shape, so don't be afraid to try something, especially if it's never been done before. And make sure you're not doing it alone. Like science is not something you do by yourself. I think working with a team of people from different backgrounds and with different perspectives, that's absolutely essential. And don't ever give up on doing something with your life that makes you excited and happy and curious. And you are the next generation of explorers, and anything is possible.
This next question is from Ming.
How will women at NASA shape the future of how we explore the universe?
Well, women are involved in all aspects of exploration, whether it is designing spacecraft, designing rockets, whether it is putting them together, testing them, launching them, whether it's flying the mission, it's bringing the crew home, it's monitoring during the mission from mission control. There are many women there that are part of that team, just as there are part of our launch team, or whether you're part of the recovery of the crew at the end of the mission. So there are women involved in all aspects of the mission, and they are certainly shaping where we go, how we get there, and how we get back.
Thank you. And Clara, this next question from Emily is for you.
What planet in the solar system are you most excited for us to get to know a little bit better?
Okay, so I think that's a really hard question. But first, I want to say NASA's Perseverance rover is going to be landing on Mars in February 2021. And it's at the Jezero crater, which is a really interesting place that scientists think might have once been flooded with water. And the rover is going to look for signs of ancient life and collect rock and soil samples to someday hopefully return all the way back to Earth. And it's got a really cool drone helicopter called Ingenuity as well. I know we have a long history of sending spacecraft to Mars, but there's still so much to learn, and I'm really excited to see how that mission turns out. Besides Mars, I'm really excited about Jupiter and NASA's Europa Clipper mission. It just makes me want to know more, and I hope we get to find out more in our lifetimes.
Given that women play a key role in space exploration today, what is a breakthrough that you hope to see in the near future when the first women walk in the moon?
Let's see, breakthroughs. We have really been talking about breakthroughs our entire time on this panel. And, I look forward to the women that are part of the Artemis mission, landing the lander on the moon, having boots on the ground, participating in those lunar exploration missions, and then seeing what the future holds for NASA exploration programs in deep space and continuing on to Mars. So I believe that every milestone that we are setting now and moving beyond is a breakthrough and leads us forward to the next milestone.
What are some of the best tools and resources available to young women hoping to pursue a career in STEM?
So I would encourage you to look at the tools that are available at your school. If you're in high school or college, I would encourage you to talk to others in the field. As I mentioned before, seek guidance from mentors or others that you think are doing what maybe you want to go do. And I think that is a tremendous resource. I think there's also lots of information. NASA has a lot of information. I'm sure you'll see websites and social media tags here at the end that you can access. NASA also has a lot of information available online about space exploration, careers at NASA, study in the STEM field. And then I would also encourage young women to consider internships, because that gives you your first taste of being able to see, what that work is like. And I can tell you, when you find something that you love, it doesn't feel like work. So try, and if you try something out and maybe that's not quite the fit, then try something else maybe the next time. But internships are a great way to take the skills and the things that you're learning in school and translate them, into practical experience, which it helps you, even down the road when you get ready to enter the workforce.
And Charlie, that's great advice. The internship is how I actually got into NASA myself. So I wanted to thank all of you for taking the time to be with us here today and sharing some of your experiences with the community. We really appreciate you celebrating with us for this Women's Equality Day program. Thank you.